I've had profound experiences with what I refer to as God,
hmm
depending on who I'm hanging out with.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Conversations, where we are meandering through existence together. And today I have John Hartigan on the show, the man behind one of my favorite Instagram accounts ever, Samsara is for Lovers. And he also does a lot of very important work with recovery and addictions and all that sort of thing. And is there anything you would like to say about yourself, John?
Not
No?
particularly.
No? Okay, that's fine too. That's fine too. With this year coming up, we've got some intense sky happenings. And I think that it's going to be really important that we're very just intentional about the sort of energy that we're putting out into the world. So if you could wish one thing for the collective this year, what would you wish?
Liberation.
Liberation?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And what does liberation mean to you?
Um, Freedom from suffering and all of the causes of suffering.
Okay. All right, I'm into it. Okay. Um, what is God, in your opinion,
To me,
to you?
oh, no, man. Personally,
Mm-hmm.
when I talk about God or
Mm-hmm.
use the word God, what I am referring to is the infinite consciousness or the infinite energy within absolutely all phenomena in existence.
Okay.
So that is what I'm referring to when I talk about God or use that word with people.
I think that's a really great definition. It really covers everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it works.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Do you feel like God is kind of like a bad word? Because
It can be.
it can be, huh?
So, from a religious perspective,
Mm-hmm.
God can be taken to a twisted, perverted intention, whereas instead of being a tool that we can use to open our hearts, it becomes a tool that people use to keep their hearts closed, to keep our minds closed. Some people
Why do you
use,
think that is?
I believe that the majority of religious institutions and the structures of institutionalized spirituality, which is a kind of oxymoron in itself, it is for their benefit to have people subservient to them, to keep people ignorant to what could be known, because that is how they create necessity for themselves.
Hmm. I see what you're saying.
So if we look at the teachings of Abrahamic religions,
Mm-hmm.
we can see that um, God is love.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the open mind, the sacred heart of Christ is the open heart that puts everybody else before themselves. So for the liberation of all beings, I'll sacrifice myself, right? So that's like the open heart. And that's and then in Islam we have surrender to that open heart, that open mind, the infinite. We have this surrender to it. And then in Judaism, we have this sort of acceptance of suffering, that we're just going to never have a homeland and we're just going to wander forever. And that act of having the entire world as a home and wandering forever is in fact how we show our love and our devotion and our open-heartedness. And so we have these three religions that are talking about the exact same thing, yet they cannot get along very well.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout time, they've never been able to get along very well. And it's not
Yeah.
because the message of love is somehow incorrect or flawed. It's because these systemic institutions that have that are very, very human in their greed, pride, arrogance, anger, desire,
Mm-hmm.
jealousy, all of these very, very human things come out through the institutions. So, yeah, God can be used as a tool to close our hearts. Our God's better than yours.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Right? That's not open-minded at all. And then for some people, God is like an acronym for the American agenda, where God is actually, it stands for guns, oil, and drugs. And it's like what our government actually trusts. And that's like how we make money and sustain an economy as an American identity. We are arms dealers. We will take your oil. We changed our money from the gold standard to the oil standard, and we sling drugs. We're fucking drug dealers. So whether it's pharmaceutical companies or whether it's street level methamphetamines and fentanyl to the cannabis industry and alcoholism and just all of the many, many things, we are a nation of arms dealers, oil pirates, and drug dealers. So a lot
I've
of people,
never actually heard that before.
oh yeah, in God we trust is like a thing. Guns,
Wow.
oil,
Okay.
drugs.
Okay.
Yeah. So God has different meanings for everyone, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, as what I mentioned earlier, just the infinite that is housed within all finite forms.
Mm-hmm. Have you always had that connection, or did it come later in life?
I think I was born with a real deep connection to the infinite, whether I was aware of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think being separated from it, from puberty until sobriety,
Mm.
even though I could never really be separated from it, or because I would cease to exist, literally. But
Yeah, yeah.
but
But the
ex-
experience of it
yeah,
felt like
alive
that.
in the delusion of separation. I lived in
Yeah.
the delusion of separation from puberty until I was probably like 30, 32, 34. And
Okay.
then after after about 15 years of 15 to 16 years of substance abuse, and 8 years of being unhoused, I got sober, and part of my journey to being able to maintain sobriety, uh, a big part of that was in a 12-step program
Mm-hmm.
where I learned how to use the word God, and I still continue to use that word with people who are participants of those programs.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that that's a very helpful part of the program?
It attracts some and
Yeah.
repulses
And
others.
repels some. Yeah.
It repulses a lot of people, but it also
Mm-hmm.
attracts a lot of people. So I think it's just a very human thing. Depending on our experiences with it is depending on the story we tell about
Mm-hmm. What are we making something mean?
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what in your opinion is the purpose of life?
Oh, the purpose of life for
Mm-hmm.
for me is to experience freedom and connection.
Mm.
And ultimately, I've been taught this, and I believe it now as through my experiences, but to also resolve our karmas and to transform our ego from a controlling, neurotic, almost dictator like character to a character that is compassionate and wise and is of service to
Mm.
the infinite within all beings instead of its own self-seeking interests.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And have you learned that through Buddhism and life?
I
I
I've
guess,
learned
yeah.
that through Buddhism and life. But again, the 12 step programs were an absolutely massive influence on me.
Mm.
And one of the biggest things that I learned in through those experiences was being of service. So
Mm-hmm.
even when I was having cravings and I was in a state of like delusional paranoia and I didn't have the skills necessary to communicate with people or the strength to like stand on a solid ground, I could still be of service. And by being of service, even in subtle ways, it would take me out of my experience that I was having in my head.
Mm.
So I could suffer through all of the stories that I told myself and all the delusions and all of the cycle, like the spiraling, thoughts, the karmas or the just the endless barrage of storytelling.
Mm.
Or I could like make coffee for people and smoke cigarettes with strangers. And in those moments when I was at those meetings and when I was still very heavily still in physical addiction, I wouldn't I would distract myself from my own mental experience by being of service to others. So
Mm.
from the I found freedom from myself in being of service to others.
Okay.
Yeah. So from that experience to where I am today, that has not changed.
Mm.
But I no longer need to actively seek escape from my experience. I can sit in the experience without having to escape from it, whether it's into being of service or whether it's into something more self-indulgent. I no longer
Mm.
need. I no longer feel the need to get out of it.
Well, that sounds like good progress.
Progress. Yeah, that's another thing that life is about.
Progress, yes. Uh, I do feel like a 12 step does, I don't have any like actual one-on-one experience with 12 step programs. I've been on like my own sobriety journey, but I feel like I was one of the people who was like sort of repulsed by things, even though I don't know. I'm not entirely sure why. It feels polarizing.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's a very difficult community for me to currently be involved in.
Mm.
I am very grateful for the 12 steps for existing. When I needed them, they were
Mm.
available. They are a tool that I used to get to where I am today.
I mean, it's hard to argue with the amount of people that they have helped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
They've definitely helped me. And I still occasionally will go to meetings, but not because I have cravings. I go to
Mm-hmm.
meetings mostly because I know how repulsive it can be. And I would like to find somebody there who is repulsed
Yeah.
and communicate with them and just try to inspire them to at least give themselves a chance. But that's not the only that's not the only way, and it's not actually a way in which I would ever push on anybody. that's why I go to the meetings in hopes of finding somebody there that is actually struggling and doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't trust any of the people there. And when I do find those people, which is very rare, it's like a precious gem that if I'm able to communicate with them. But I've ventured far outside of the triangle of Alcoholics Anonymous and various other 12-step programs to where I am today. And now I work heavily in the harm reduction community.
Mm.
Even though I personally am abstinent, I
Mm-hmm.
don't push that on anybody else. And I find it much more rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. What would you say is like the most useful habit you've found to move through life?
Most useful habit to move
Most
through
useful
life.
habit. Going from like the really, really big questions to the teeny tiny questions.
No, that's cool. That's really good. I mean, that's I think meditation is probably the most useful habit that I've ever developed as I was moving through life. Um, yep,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Would you say that that has contributed to your ability to be with things?
yeah, a hundred
Yeah.
percent, 100%. I if I would have been capable of tapping into what everybody is capable of tapping into
Mm-hmm.
when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, but I was like getting into like unstable housing and just starting to live on the street. I probably would have been able to have avoided a lot of substance use disorder. But then I wouldn't be here right now. So it's like a completely useless hypothetical thing, but at the same time, it is something that I think about a lot where I'm like, dang, I wish I would have just gone deeper into meditation when I was a kid. I wish I had gotten like exposed to this at a younger age because I could have saved myself a lot of trouble, but nobody knows if that's true or not. I might have, there's a thousand
Yeah.
stories that,
Different timelines.
yeah, none of them matter.
uh,
Yeah,
and now you're getting this wisdom on the other side, right?
I'm trying.
I know
I'm
that
trying.
some people aren't really like particularly. I know that the statement that like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger can be somewhat polarizing, but
Yeah.
I've found it to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. I am grateful. I am very, very grateful. I have actually arrived at a place where all of the worst things in my life have truly become some of my greatest assets
Mm,
because the currently I'm working at a homeless shelter. It's a low barrier shelter.
hmm
Because it is a low barrier shelter, we get a lot of people with active mental health obstacles and untreated substance use disorder and untreated mental health obstacles too.
hmm
So it gets very, very, I wouldn't use the word complicated because it's not actually complicated. The only thing that's complicated about it is my emotional reactions to these behaviors.
hmm
But the behaviors themselves are not complicated. It's just untreated mental health and substance use disorder. And when I'm submerged into these situations and I have the ability to connect with people, whether I am sharing a story that inspires them to be like, oh, this guy gets it, or whether or not they just have a natural feeling that I actually get it. The reason that I'm able to navigate through the unhoused community the way that I currently am able to is because of how much time I spent in the unhoused community and how much time I spent with my own unaddressed mental health obstacles and the amount of time I spent with my own untreated substance use disorder.
hmm
So
Now
all
you're able
these
to hold that.
yeah, and I get to hold it. All these like delicious things that I'd be like, you know, I don't like to use the word trauma very much because it's a word that people love to throw around, but um, things that are very deep wounds that I never thought I was going to be able to heal from have actually become almost the most valuable thing.
Sources of strength now.
Sources of strength and connection and freedom and
Nice.
connection. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. Totally. I don't think I would be able to get nearly as close to the vulnerable population um, had I not come from the vulnerable population.
Mhm. Okay, well, how about we end this off by like just taking a minute to like sit together in silence and hold the frequency of liberation and connection for all.
Yay!
And if anyone in the world is listening to this, join us.
Yay!
All right. Right. Well, I hope that this has spoken only the highest good into anyone who's listening's life. And is there anything else that you might like to share about, I don't know, projects or anything that's doing good in the world or anything? I don't know. Up to you.
Hmm. I just hope everybody out there who's struggling can stay grounded and really connected because all the things that are falling apart and changing, they're not infinite and they're not even real. They're all like illusory systems that have been keeping us in the fog of ignorance for a long time. But the earth is um, supportive and we can rely on it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes. The earth is supportive and we can rely on it. Let's end it there, folks. Good night. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation today. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I would love to have you in the Cosmic Wizard community. Thank you so much.